It's only 9 a.m. It's already 90 degrees, and the cicadas are singing away. Welcome to high summer in the mid-Atlantic. Hello everyone from Northern Virginia. It's Beth, and I am filming this in my former cross-stitch space, which has now been converted into a watercolor studio as it is. Feels kind of strange calling it a studio because I still don't really feel like a real artist, but I've had some requests to show the paintings that I've done since I started taking up watercolor about a year and a half ago, and I'm happy to oblige. It's great that people are interested in seeing what I'm doing. So I'm going to break this up into two parts, two different videos, and this first video is going to be watercolor that I have done roughly chronological order that is based on tutorials, either video tutorials or step-by-step with pictures and books. So these are essentially me copying paintings, original paintings done by other artists. So I don't consider these original work per se. It's all a learning process. And the first painting I'm showing you came from a book. It is one of the very first paintings that I did. So it's obviously executed a little bit clumsily, but it was a good exercise in negative painting, which is where you kind of paint around stuff. In watercolor, if you're not familiar with watercolor painting, you have to work from light to dark. So you have to keep the lightest part of your paper unpainted and preserved, and very carefully paint darker paint over. So you can't go back and just paint lighter paint. It's very hard to do, to paint something light over something dark. So this was from a book, and unfortunately I don't remember the name of the book. I check a lot of them out at the library and work through the tutorials and then send them back. And so this next one is from a YouTube artist named Umberto Rossini. He's Italian. He does gorgeous landscapes, and they're kind of nice and loose and fun. His tutorials are quite easy to follow, as is the case with most of the YouTube artists. This is another one that came from a book, and it was just, again, I don't remember the name of the book. It might have been the first book that the sailboat painting came from, but these weren't really step-by-steps. But they were paintings in the book, and I thought they were pretty, and I wanted to recreate them, so I did. And here's another very early effort from a different book. I think this one was from England, and I love doing snow scenes. So this was in my office at work for quite a while, and I put it on the back of my cubicle so my coworker could see it, and he called it his picture window. So I thought that was really sweet, because our office, we have no actual windows where we work. It's nothing but artificial light, and everything is gray and it's gloomy. So I brought in a winter scene, but it still managed to cheer the place up quite a bit. This is from a tutorial on Skillshare, which I joined last year. And there are a lot of good watercolor classes on there. And so this came from that, just painting a misty forest. This is, unfortunately, I gave up on it a little bit. It was just for the practice, but that's not to say anything bad about the artist who created the tutorial. He is on YouTube. His name is Steve Mitchell, and the name of his channel is The Mind of Watercolor. And he is just a fantastic teacher. He's from South Carolina, and I hope maybe I can meet him one day and actually paint with him. He has amazing, if you're looking for a place to start, if you're thinking of trying watercolor and you would like to go with a video instructor, a really great one online, he's on YouTube and Patreon as well. Steve Mitchell, can't go wrong with him. Here's some very cute fun feathers that I did following a tutorial online, and I think the channel name, I think it's Cocoa Bee. I'll have to look it up. Again, I don't have it right in front of me. I'll put links to these different channels down here below so you all can check it out. Check out these artists for themselves. What I do is I do my best, but it's often it's a pale imitation of the real thing. So much talent out there. Another painting that I did from just a simple tutorial on painting a lavender field in front of the sun. Unfortunately, I did this on kind of cheap paper and it didn't really turn out the way I want. People advise beginning watercolor artists to paint on the good paper right from the start, but sometimes when I'm just getting a feel for the brush strokes and the techniques, I'll use the less expensive paper. Here's my attempt to paint ocean water. I don't know that that turned out so well, but it was an effort. It's something. I tried. Give me half a gold star, maybe. Okay, so this is another tutorial. I think this was on Skillshare, and it was just a fun little short class on painting succulents. It's kind of more of an illustrative style, obviously, but I'm, as you have probably already seen and will continue to see through this video and the next one, I don't pick any one subject to paint. I don't have any one style of painting. I'm still figuring that out. It takes a while. It's work in progress. I'm sure eventually I'll narrow things down, but right now I'm having fun kind of painting whatever strikes my fancy. And so this is another Skillshare tutorial on painting flowers. Very easy. Just get a lot of pigment on your brush and flick, 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 flick. And that's all there is to it. So there, I just saved you from watching the video. No, kidding. Skillshare is awesome. It's worth it watching. These are two bookmarks that I tried to do. Small paintings. These are obviously the Aurora. And this was more of a speed paint video on YouTube. There's an artist who she doesn't really give step-by-step tutorials. She just films herself painting and then speeds it up. And so you can watch and kind of slow it down and try to figure out what she did. And it's funny to read comments sometimes because people want their hand held for every little thing. And to be honest, when you're starting out as an artist, yes, it's nice to have some step-by-step stuff, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to kind of see and do for yourself and figure out what works for you. You can't have every little step dictated to you every way, literally for every painting, because otherwise you'll never be an artist. You'll just be a copyist. And I'm trying to move beyond that phase of being a copyist and turn into an actual artist. And so, yeah, don't always need your hand held for everything. This is another tutorial. I think this came from Skillshare as well. And it was practice in doing wet on wet background washes. And then this effect was created by just dropping clear water into the wet paint. And it makes these sort of, they're called blooms, sometimes cauliflower blooms or just blooms. So it turned out pretty cool. These next two were from an artist. I think she's in Mexico and her stuff is just wonderful. And so I was inspired to just try to create it just for the practice. Really happy with the way these turned out. I'll probably give these as presents to somebody. Let's see. Okay, this was a copy of a study by a Swedish watercolor artist. His stuff is amazing, and of course, as soon as I bring up the painting, his name flies right out of my head. Sorry, but I'll look it up and I'll put his name in the description as well, because his stuff is almost, I know he's been described as sometimes more real than real, hyper realistic, and this was just a basic study of some obviously like a barn and some cabins and a forest, and that's supposed to be kind of a snowy-ish field. I don't begin to do these people justice, but again, practice, practice, practice. Here is another, actually I think it goes like that. There we go. Another painting inspired by the wonderful artist from Mexico. Here are two cards that I got. You can buy watercolor cards that are blank and then paint on them. And so these came from tutorials also on YouTube. There's a lot of artists out there who have instructions on how to paint these pretty loose florals. And so lots of fun, really easy to do, even for beginners. Another artist, I think this is the same one who did the colorful feathers that I showed you earlier. She just kind of does these fun doodles, and it's very inspiring to get creative and try something for yourself. So although this is original in a way, and I came up with the the color, I chose my colors and the patterns turned out, this is still based on watching her paint in the same way, and so I don't consider this really an original. Next, I have some paintings that I did based on a book by a fantastic American watercolor artist named Joyce Hicks, and her style is super cool. I mean, obviously, if you try to imitate her style, it's going to be real obvious that you're copying Joyce Hicks' style. But her book is still very. This came from her book. I'll just grab it real quick. It is Painting Beautiful Watercolor Landscapes. Again, her name is Joyce Hicks, and she has a lot of paintings in there. And in addition to step-by-step instructions, she also has finished paintings and a lot of information about her process, how to choose your colors, how to mix colors, how to compose a scene, what makes for a good eye-catching center of interest, and so on. So, fantastic book. Again, I highly recommend it if you are a starting watercolor artist. So here are a few more of the paintings that came from her book that I did step by step. And this is the first one that I tried, and it turned out a little odd. These almost look like, I don't know, like big hamburgers on stilts or something, but that's okay. It was just first shot. Again with the cheap paper. When will I ever learn? It's cute, except, I don't know, that kind of almost looks like a big moldy lollipop, but I like the way the barns and the field turned out. It's cool. She has some great color mixing ideas as well. I really love this one. This, to me, is evocative of, and she gets a lot of inspiration from the Pacific Northwest, and this looks like it could be California or Oregon, something in that area. I've never been, but anyway. She does coastal scenes as well, and I like the way this one turned out, especially the grasses and the hills around. And the picket fence. She loves to do white picket fences, and they are awfully fun to paint. So, yeah, she's just the side of impressionist. All right, the next paintings come from another artist she's on YouTube and also on Skillshare. Her name is Jean Lurson. She has the coolest hybrid accent I've ever heard. You have to go watch her videos and you see what I mean. I love the way she talks. She does these amazing landscapes, and again, very step by step. And they're a lot more abstract-y than Joyce Hicks, obviously, and not quite as colorful. Well, some of her stuff is very colorful. But these landscapes that I did, I was inspired to do. These were painted using just a couple of colors. And then there's another kind of windswept hill tutorial that I followed. This is painting a tree and a sky, and the hill, actually, the texture on the hill was created with saran wrap. You put the saran wrap on while the paint is still wet, and you leave it on until it dries and peel it off, and you get that kind of cool crackly effect. Let's see. Next, I have some paintings that I did, practice paintings based on books by a fantastic Canadian artist named Gordon McKenzie. He has a whole series of books called the Watercolorist's Essential Notebook, and it's on Amazon, pretty easy to find. And he's really big, especially on landscapes, and I enjoy painting landscapes a lot. So that was cloud practice. Here is, sorry, bright color alert. These were painted with quinacridone paints, and quinacridones are super intense and bright and punchy. So sorry if your retinas um, took a beating from this one. I'll go ahead and move on. Another landscape. This was done on very cheap paper, and I didn't like the way it was turning out at first, but I kept at it, and actually I ended up, I don't hate it. Another Gordon McKenzie, just more skies and clouds. He has a lot of cloud studies that you can do. Always fun. You never know how they're going to turn out. And this was inspired by a tutorial in his book where he encourages you to paint with one color only. So this is cobalt blue. And I basically started on the outside and just moved further in and just used more and more pigment on the brush and less water. And his painting had an airplane, and I decided to put seagulls in mine. All right. This was from a tutorial by a fantastic artist who's also up in the Pacific Northwest. His name is Rick Serkowitz. He regularly updates his channel. He does incredibly thorough step-by-step tutorials that he lists everything you need, all the paints that he uses, and then he goes through the whole painting, and he's incredibly thorough. His instructions are super easy to follow. I recommend him highly. And so I've done a couple of things of his, but this was one that turned out pretty good. I like it. All right, next I've got a couple of watercolors from an Australian artist named Jean Haynes. And this came from one of her books. And obviously her style is very loose, flowy, impressionist, almost abstract. And I did these, again, with the wet and wet backgrounds. I love doing those. And then very lightly painting the koi fish on top once the background is dry. And this is just a big experiment in different color combinations, what works, what doesn't. But these are messy, and I have to actually when I paint these, I have a big plastic box lid. I'm just getting it out to show you. And I paint on top of this. Oops, sorry for bumping. I paint on top of this. You can see it's kind of messy. So it doesn't get all over the floor and the carpet, because literally when you're doing these, you're spraying the paint, you're putting paint on, you're spraying it with water. Paint is running and dripping all off the page and going everywhere. So it's so much fun for your inner 4-year-old. And then I will finish this video with some paintings I've done from my absolute favorite YouTube artist ever. His name is Peter Sheeler. He's also from Canada. What is it about Canada and amazing watercolor artist? I don't know. But Peter, he's interesting. He doesn't speak in his videos. Never heard his voice, never seen his face. He only shows his hands. But he's sort of like Rick Serkowitz, if Rick Serkowitz never spoke. So I guess he's sort of like, if you've heard of Penn and Teller, the magicians, then I guess Rick would be Penn and Peter Sheeler would be Teller, because you never hear his voice. But he really does magic with watercolor. And these are pen and wash. So he starts off almost always with the pen ink drawing, non-water soluble ink. And all of his paintings are done with just a few colors. He is wonderful with the limited palette paintings, and mostly landscapes. And a lot of the stuff he does is from his imagination, which blows me away. My imagination is awful. I really like this one because it reminds me of a farmhouse that's on the way to work that I pass every day, only the trim of the farmhouse is blue and not red. But other than that, I'm happy with the way this turned out. I think it looks every bit as good as his. That's the other thing I love about Peter Sheeler's stuff. It's so easy to follow. It's mind-blowing how how well things turn out, even if you have very limited painting experience. And that just shows it's all about the teacher and the instructions. So I watch his videos carefully. My motto, my MO of operation is watch twice and paint once. So another gorgeous farm scene, winter scene, the snow. He gives so much good advice on painting. So yeah, really, Peter Sheeler is the person who got me started on painting actual watercolor. I was looking up online watercolor techniques, but I was going to try to do digital painting with the Corel Painter, and I was having problems getting the software to work like I wanted it to. And I was thinking, well, maybe I can just do watercolor painting with actual paper and paint. And Peter Sheeler was the first online artist that I found. And I realized that his tutorials were so easy to follow. So it inspired me to get some paints and paper and some brushes and just go for it. So anyway, that is it for my copied paintings and tutorial based paintings. So I hope you enjoyed. And please, if you can, go visit everyone's links that I'll put down in the description, and leave a comment if you feel like it and a like. And I will see you in the next video, which will be my original paintings that I've done so far. So stay tuned. I'll see you soon. Bye.